Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, and that means that we are going to begin our webinar, Building a Winning Team. My name is Tanika Williams, and I will be the host for this section. And I wanted to just bring some housekeeping with respect to the webinar, but first I'll introduce myself. I am the Master Trainer with Dignity of Children, and I have been in the field of after school for over 14 years. I, like many of you who may be on this webinar right now, actually started off as a client of Dignity of Children. And I would say maybe a couple of months ago, decided to join the team full time. And I have not looked back since. So you are in for quite a treat. Our CEO and founder, Sonia Toledo, will be leading quite a presentation that I think you will find helpful. But before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to give you some housekeeping tips so that we can be able to fully enjoy this experience. This is a webinar, so everyone will be on mute. You will not be able to communicate verbally. However, there are several options at your disposal. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see one button that says raise your hands. And that will be a way to get my and Sonia's attention. So let's go ahead and try it. Why don't you go ahead and just raise your hand? Just click raise your hand. I see you out there, Robin. Someone else, raise your hand so that we know that you're in the house. Yes, I see you. Yes, thank you. Someone else, just raise your hand. Perfect. Okay. So the other thing that you have on the bottom is that there are, and some people may also have it at the top. So if it's not on the bottom of your screen, your buttons may be at the top of your screen, or it might be on the left-hand side, but you may have to use your mouse to sort of scroll around so that you can see. One of the other things that you have at your disposal is the chat function. So with the chat function, that's your way of being able to communicate with us. So when you click chat, you can click to either chat to the entire group, or you can click to chat to the panelists, which would be myself and Sonia. And so what I would suggest is that if you have something that you desperately need to say, put it in on the chat, and I'll make sure that Sonia gets your comment and your concern so that she can address it. The other thing that we have is Q&A. And so at different points during the session, you may have some questions that you want to ask. Please feel free to write that in the Q&A section, and I'll make sure that Sonia gets those questions. Lastly, if you want to stay in contact with us, we're on Twitter at Dignity Now. We're also on Facebook at Dignity of Children. And finally, you can access us through our website at www.dignityofchildren.com. And feel free to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already done so, so that you can receive the resources that we send out on a weekly basis. So with that, I have the honor and the privilege to introduce our CEO and founder, Sonia Toledo.
That would be me. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Toledo. I know some of you may already know me or have had classes with me, or are in the credential class, or just know me from an email that you received by me. So I am the president and CEO of Dignity of Children, and I just want to have an opportunity to tell you about Dignity of Children. In 2008, prior to that, for those who know me for some time, I was working with an organization called Child Care Inc. And in that organization, I was able to really dig deep on the regulations and on a statewide level of what's happening for professional development. So in 2008, I already had moved on from Child Care Inc. and I decided that one of the things that was missing for New York City and developing our staff is that there was not one place that a director could go to send their staff and they get all of the requirements for the Office of Children and Family Services. So I created Dignity of Children, and we created this program called Dignity Development with Dignity, where we go out to your sites and we train your staff in meeting all the regulations. And as time went on, we created some other trainings that support mainly programs to be in compliance, but most of all, I think one of our greatest distinctions is that we concentrate on building the foundation, the fundamentals of what it takes to work with children in the classroom. So building a winning team is an evolution of mine for the last 2 years. In 2016, I piloted a program called Partnership with Dignity to train some directors in being trainers so they could train their own staff on location. And we had the FIBS Neighborhood House, the YMCA, Steinley Isaac participate. And what we found is that some of the readiness and the fundamentals that directors need to have up front needed to be in place before a director could really train and educate their staff appropriately. So here we are. Dignity of Children is going to support you in putting in some structures, some systems, and some tools. We have some tools that we could offer you to support you in figuring out how you develop a winning team that's intentional and focuses on the culture of your program. Every program has a separate culture, and the director is the leader of that culture. The director is the designer of that culture. So I really want to talk about that. So I'm really excited, but before we move on, I have a poll that I would like Tanika to send out, and I want to see who's in the room. I want to see who's here. So if we could see the poll. There we go. So let's take a few minutes to fill out this poll. Let me know how many years have you been supervising and what's your role? And it's just 2 questions. And then as soon as you finish, we'll get an understanding of who's in the room. Nice. Okay, they're coming in. Very nice. So we're going to close the poll in about 5 seconds. There we have it. Okay, so the polls are closed. Let's see what the results are. Nice. Okay, so we have the majority of the people on the call today are 3 years plus working in after-school programs. So that's really great. That way I know that I could support you at that capacity. And then we have 14% less than a year. We have another 14% less than 3 years. And the majority of the people on the call are 71% at 3 years plus. The next question, what is your role? So a single site supervisor, 85% of you are in a single site and 14% of you are in multi-site. Okay, good. So, the multi-site supervisor, I give you the option to ask some questions as some things come up for you, but I'm going to try to remember to put in my 2 cents about supervising multiple sites, because it does make a difference. So cool. Thank you so much, Tanika. So let's bring that one down. Okay, awesome. So let's start with this clear conversation, okay? Understanding your workforce. Why? Why do we need to understand the people that work for us? Because our field, first of all, we all know that our field it's kind of a complex field. So we have certain criterias and elements that make it very difficult for us to retain our staff. One, short period of time. So you only hire part-time, 2 to 6, 1 to 5, 3 to 6. And most of the time, everyone comes to you is going to be shortly out of high school, in college, right out of college, or neighborhood community member. And what that may bring up for you is you have different generations working for you. And the different generations all have different needs. So one of the things we want to do is understand our generation and what their needs are. I have this great article that I would love to share with you about our generation in the workforce. There has never been another time in our lifetime that 4 generations are working at the same time. Now I'm going to go backwards, right? So the silent generation is all our grandparents, but you know that many of our grandparents are also working. If you find there's some executive directors that are in their 60s and their 70s, and I'm going to be honest with you, they can't afford to retire. Because there was a time where, retirement was clear 65, everybody just moved on. Well, there are people who are staying on in the field and working because they need to work, not because they want to work. There are a few that really love the work and they want to stay there. So I'm not talking about those. And then we have the baby boomers. Baby boomers are in the same place. You may have baby boomers that are your supervisors. You may have baby boomers that are literally working with you in the classroom, or you hire, or you need to hire because they want to work. And the same situations with them. They are very loyal, they're dedicated, and they believe in what they're doing. But the most of all, they want to be there because they want to work, and they have to work. And then we have 2 generations, Generation X and Generation Y. Generation X are the generation from 1965 to 1980. Most of you are in Generation X. Some of you are in Generation Y, which is the millennials. I don't know if I said that right, but I want you to know that that's one word that drives me crazy. But Generation Y,
I think it's groovy.
Well, thank you. It's just like my spelling. So most of our workforce is Generation Y, and meaning that you're hiring young adults that were born from 1981 to the year 2000. So these are our young adults that are freshly out of high school, in college, and freshly out of college. They're the majority of our workforce. Why? Because it fits in their work, in their lifestyle. It fits in their desire to work or their need to work because they're in school and they only have a part-time opportunity. What's happening here is that the Generation Y really wants to be developed. They're interested in growing and being developed. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily want to do this work forever. They may just be with us transit for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but sometimes 6 months. But we would prefer them to be around for at least 1 or 2 years so we could have a full school year with them. The ones that want to stay with us and in the field of after school or in the field of education or the field of childcare, we want to know who they are, because then now we have an opportunity to actually support their needs to want to stay in the field and offer them some development, training, and educational opportunities that they wouldn't have if they were working somewhere else. So the reason I'm bringing up the workforce is because once we understand our workforce, then we start creating a structure around in our program that has them feel like they have a buy-in in what you're doing. And they also have an opportunity to grow while they're working with you. studies have shown that corporations that train their staff and have growth opportunities in their staff, meaning succession plan, meaning if I stay here for a year or two and I learn these skills, eventually I could be a supervisor or eventually I could be a director. If staff knows that they have those opportunities within your organization, they're most likely willing to stay longer because they know that they could be developed with you. So let's move on to the next step. So now that you have a good idea of who your staff is, right? We do a little assessment and we say, okay, I understand who my staff is. Some people want to stay for just a short period of time while they finish college or until they get to another job or the job that they really want. And some people want to stay in the field of after school. Now I want to see, well, what skills do you have? You know, so I'm going to ask Tanika to take on the screen, and we're going to do some sharing. So on your chat, please write down what skills would you like your staff to have before they get on the floor. What are the skills that you absolutely know that your staff needs before they get on the floor? So as we see the chat goes down, okay, Tanika's waiting. Behavior management, absolutely. Yes, that is the number one thing. Now, I know that one of the behavior management techniques that your staff will have, if they are not trained appropriately, would be go to the director's office. I can't deal with you anymore. Now you need to go to the director's office because you're not following my instructions. Yes, they do that because they don't have no other techniques. They don't have no other strategies. And they don't feel that they're well equipped. I'm speaking of your staff. Your staff is not well equipped if they don't have other skills. What else do we have? Let's see. Yes, STEM. STEM is definitely one. STEM is a buzz right now, especially in our growing technology age. Science, technology, engineering, and math is a movement of future workforce that most of our programs are required to teach our children STEM or experience or expose them to STEM activities. And the truth is that your staff can't really do effective STEM activities if they don't have classroom management skills. So yeah, I know I did it ahead of the time. But lesson planning and activity planning, yes, I think I see somebody from Ariel. Lesson planning, classroom management. But here it is. You can't do lesson planning unless you have some skills on writing objectives, writing facilitation techniques, understanding the education. So there's these layers of understanding in order to do a lesson plan, or layers of understanding in order to facilitate a STEM activity. And those are classroom management, behavior management. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, and we have a lot that are in the same. Promote positive reinforcement, that's correct. Promote positive reinforcement, we could also talk about, teaching values or teaching children, appropriate social and emotional skills. Social and emotional skills is another buzz, another trend of how to teach our staff. Let's do a couple of more. I like your handwriting, Tanika. Awesome. Awesome. So we have Oh yes, transitions. Oh, transitions. So you're in a school building and your principal does not want any noise in the hallway, and I know exactly how it is. And you have middle schoolers. So transitions again. You want your staff to feel confident that they are taking your kids from point A to point B. There's also a sense of safety. So yes, there's safety issues as part of transition, and we want staff to know about safety. So just looking at this chart alone gives us lots of understanding of what our staff needs. Our staff needs to know all of this before they get on the floor, or at least half of this, at least the classroom management, behavior management, and safety. And what happens is that we're not everywhere to know if they already know it. So what I would like to do, I am going to, I missed my place. So we're going to go back to my PowerPoint. Tanika, could we go back to the PowerPoint? There we go. Okay, thank you.
So, I think it was my handwriting that threw you off, Sonia. It's okay.
Yes, but thank you. You did a great job with that handwriting and the writing board. So what we want to do is we want you to first have that list in your mind of what are the concepts and skills that your staff needs in your program. Because for many programs, depending on your location, on the theme of your program, the culture of your program, you may have certain strategies and skills that you absolutely want your staff to know. So this is a great time to begin writing those skills down. And so we just want to know what are the skills, right? It's important to get that a program culture starts with the director. And what I mean by that, because when you talk about culture, sometimes we go into, ethnic background, but it's not really ethnic background. Culture is in the environment that you're in, what's the expected behavior? And it's just like when you go to church, right? Or some of us don't, but most of us have gone to a house of worship of some kind. And there's an automatic way of being when you step into a house of worship. So you automatically know that you must be quiet. That's the house of worship I went. You can't talk. I mean, when I was a little girl, my ears were really red because I couldn't giggle, I couldn't do anything. So it was like, I was told to cross my hands and be quiet and pay attention. And those of you may know what I'm talking about if you grew up like I did. But there are different behaviors that are expected depending on the house of worship that you are, you're representing. But the same thing happens when kids go to school. When they go to school, they have a certain expected behavior. So what we're looking at is you designing a program culture that you know what the expected behavior is, and everybody in your culture, in your program knows as well. Your children, your parents, your staff, and everyone that walks in there. And it's energy. If you think about it this way, it's energy. You want to feel the energy of your program. Some of you have been in programs with me before. You know the theme of the theory of the supermarket theory. I like to know how my culture is doing, what is happening in my culture, and the only way I know about that is by listening to my participants, listening to how my staff is talking about the program, but most of all, listening to my parents. So the supermarket theory is that, one day you're riding down the supermarket aisle, and oh my God, I hear a couple of my parents talking about my program in the next aisle. You know what? What would you like your parents to say? At that point, what do you want your parents to say? Not what you want them not to say. What do you want them to say? What do you want them to say to the other parent? You should put your child there because my child has the opportunity to explore. They have the opportunity to make friends. They're developing socially and emotionally. They have more patience to do homework. They've grown from the beginning of the year to the, midway already, and they're already being able to time manage themselves. What specific things do you want your parents to say about your program? So these are some elements that are important in building a culture. What is your vision? What is your goal? A vision and a goal is active. A vision and a goal means that it's present, it's visual, it's being talked about, there's a call to action about it. A vision and a goal for your program means that you have a vision for the next year and everybody else knows about it. You have goals and everybody else is taking action to set and make those goals happen. Core values. Core values gives you the opportunity to say, okay, what are the values that we're teaching our children? And what are the values that we are representing? So is it a value of integrity, the value of caring, the value of being kind? So now we're speaking the language, now we are responding to each other and saying, remember to be kind. We're caring with each other, so we take care of each other. How do you want your children to talk about your culture? Policies, I know. Policies have to happen, and we have policies from all kinds of places, right? So if your funder has policies, your organizations have policies, the Office of Children and Family has policies, and sometimes you have policies that you want to implement. Procedures. I want to talk a little bit about procedures. We're going to be a little bit in depth in a little while, but procedures are very important because procedures is the actual how-to. How do we produce this policy? So how-to could be, how do we handle an unauthorized adult from picking up a child? So there should be a step-by-step for each staff member should know exactly what are the 4 or 5 steps that they have to do when they are confronted with someone that's not on the list. And it's consistent, it's clear, and everyone in your staff knows what it is, including your parents, know what the procedure is. Your program activities are with fun. Is it engaging? Is it exploring? Is it, what are the program activities that are happening and how does it feel? How do I feel after I finish your program activities? The relationships that I build when I'm in your program. And I want to talk about the standards. Standards are something that the program decides to adopt. Standards are not just there. Standards have to be set. These are the standards that we're adopting, and these are the standards that we're committed to reaching. 1 at a time, 2 at a time, whatever that is, but that helps us in reaching our maximum high performance environment. So, what is a program culture? All of these elements are important elements for a very effective program culture, meaning it's a high performance environment. These are something that you have to think about as you're looking at developing your staff. Let's move on. Do we have another poll? Yes, we have another poll. So I would like you to fill out a poll. This one is a readiness pulse. So what we're looking at is how much time do you allot your staff for professional development this year? Have you already have that in your schedule? So let's take a few minutes to answer this question. So how much time have you allotted this year for your staff to be trained? And do you have an allotted budget for staff professional development? Yes and no, or you don't know right now, and it's a good idea to go and find out. And then we have how much planning time do you have your staff? You know, so how much prep time and planning time do you allot your staff? Is your staff allotted for the week? So let's take a couple of more. They're coming in now. Okay, nice. All right, so let's take about 5 seconds, Tanika, and then we'll close the poll. Nice. Okay, the poll is closed. So 20% of you said, I haven't had the chance yet. So in other words, you haven't thought about how many hours you're going to train your staff. At least one solid day, 9 hours a year, and 15 hours a year. About 40% of you have 15 hours a year. Now here's the truth. Your OCFS requirements requires you to train your staff at least 30 hours every 2 years during your permit period, right? So for most people get a 2-year permit period. If you have a 4-year permit period, that's 60 hours of training that your staff needs to have. Just a little bit in the regulations right now. If your staff works 20 hours or more, they have to have 15 hours a year. You could prorate if they have less than 20 hours. So if they have 15 hours a year, you could prorate it to like maybe 12 hours a year, and DOH is going to be fine with that. But most importantly, you have to know that there are certain topic areas and amount of hours that your staff needs. If you want more information about the regulations, Tanika and I are always here and available to support you in that. So start thinking about how many hours do you need this year to train your staff. And it doesn't mean outside, it means inside and outside. So what are you doing in-house and what are you doing outside? Meaning either an outside agency is coming in to train your staff, or you're sending your staff out to get trained. And what trainings are you going to do internally? Okay. The next question, do you have a budget allotted for staff development? Yes, great. So nobody said no. 60% of you say you don't know yet. And that's good, because that's a great answer. That's a great question to have. And it doesn't mean that you have to have a lot of money. And that's why we're doing this training, because we realize that you don't have to have a big budget to train your staff. And that's what we're here to do, is to support you on how to train your staff with a minimal budget, or if you have a budget, to utilize your budget the best way you can. And then 40% of you said, yes, you have a budget. That's awesome. What's the next question? We have how much planning time. All right, so 20% of you said 0. Okay, now this is a common practice. I don't want you to feel that you should or supposed to, but I do want you to consider that the more time that you give your staff to plan, you have more time to actually support them and teaching them and develop them. So if they don't have planning time, it's very hard to expect anything different than what they already know. 1 to 3 hours a week, 40%, and 4 to 5 hours a week, 40%. That is awesome. So the more time that you have your staff planning also gives you some time to squeeze in there some development time as well. So we can stop sharing, and thank you so much for taking this opportunity to share. I want to show you a tool that we created 2016 with the program Partnership with Dignity. the intention is to understand, do a pre-assessment for all of our staff to outline the competencies that they already have. Okay, so I'm going to take a minute, hold on a second while I show you a screen. Shoot, it went away. Okay. So while I get this screen on the board, I'm going to ask Tanika to take on.
Well, Sonia, there was a question that actually came up while you were talking, and one of the questions was, how do we handle, getting staff prepared at the beginning of the day when there really isn't any planning time allotted? I mean, I've been in that situation, and that's difficult. So what do you suggest we do in a situation like that?
So when you don't have time for them to prep.
Yeah.
I would hope that you have at least a week of preparation before you put them on the floor, because they almost have to do a mock or a demonstration. And what I do recommend is that as a director, which is very difficult at 3 hours of the day, is to, one, do an assessment to see which staff is stronger than others. So you could start working with the staff that does not have strong skills and do demonstrations in the classroom. Okay, it's not an easy process. It's almost like a very difficult process to do. I will also offer them as much resources that you can, either through online, send them off with some reading materials, or show videos when you have trainings with them. Send them videos for them. We have a great website that's called teachingchannel.com. It's not our website, but we love it because it talks about how to manage a classroom and teach children with the Common Core, and it's a great teaching tool for your staff. Thank you, Tanika, for that. So here we have, let me bring you into our next page. There you have it. Okay. So this is a performance analysis, a staff performance analysis. This performance analysis was designed by me in 2016, looking at how do we now know what skills our staff have before they get in the classroom. We want to know what knowledge they have, what skills they have, what's their capacity, and what's their motive. So here's a program, PS14 from the Bronx, and 12 people took this assessment. So you could see the results as a team, or you could see the results as an individual. So here's Marisol, and she actually took the assessment, and as you see the first 3 questions, how confident do you feel about the regulations? She feels very confident. Do you understand what to do with a sick child? She feels very confident. She understands and she could implement the concept. So she's telling you up front that she knows this. Well, let's look at it as a team. Okay, so here you have 12 participants. First question, how confident do you feel about your understanding of the OCFS regulations? 50% of the staff feel confident and feel that they can implement this concept. That's huge. With 12 staff, I would say that this program has learned how to retain their staff. This is the beginning of the year, and that means that 50% of her staff knows this concept. That's a very good feeling. But then you have 5 staff that's saying, you know what? I understand the concept. I've heard about it. You're talking about it a lot, but I need a little bit more training. I need for you to give me more information about this because I'm not 100% confident. And then you have one person that says they're not confident and that they want more training. So this is an opportunity now for you to look and say, okay, how do I give the information to my staff without actually doing a training? Or because it's only 50% of my staff, maybe I need to match up my staff so they could teach each other. Or I honestly feel that you could just send out a memo with clear expectations on how to support the OCFS regulations and what their roles are. And this is something that we could support you with as well. We have lots of materials on the OCFS. We have 7 concrete steps of passing an inspection. We have, checklists that we could share with you as well. Let's go to another question. Wow. So do you understand what to do with a sick child? Well, 100% of this staff feels confident and they could implement this concept. Meaning when they have a sick child, they have actually are following the procedures that you set in place. So this is good news for this director, right? So this is something that she doesn't have to pay attention to much, but she could observe. All right, here's another one. Ratio. Ratio is huge. So most of her staff knows the ratio. My assumption is that this staff is new. So this is the staff that needs to know the ratio, and it could be a very quick conversation. And what I'm doing is I'm giving you ideas on how you can make sure that your staff knows this information without you feeling that you have to do a full-fledged training for every detail that you need to train them in. Okay, so we'll talk about that towards the end because we are moving forward. Here's one with ratios. I'm going to move fast forward here. Here's an open-ended question, and I think this is a great question to just get a sense of what do you do when someone that is not on the list gets picked up. I spoke about that before, which is the unauthorized pickup procedure. And, you could just check to see right here, what are the responses, and are these responses acceptable for you? Are these the responses that you expect your staff to know? So I'm just gonna go on and give you a quick review of the rest of this assessment. So you have classroom management, coaching and guiding behavior. I'm going to go pretty quick. You have project-based learning curriculum. You don't have to use the whole tool. You could use a tool on the areas that you want more emphasis on, like meeting the developmental needs of children. Partnership with parents, how do you work with parents? Child abuse identification and reporting, do they know the mandates? Are they clear on what to do? Team building strategies, building facilitation skills in the classroom, and some general questions. So this is just an assessment that we will personalize for each program. It's a link, so when you could send a link to your staff, you copy this link, you could send it by email, what's up. I heard that what's up is a good link because you could tell who opened it right away. You could send it by email, put it on the body of an email, or you could have them do it during a training session or a meeting session. And it'll take them about 20 minutes to complete. And this way, the advantages of knowing what your staff knows is huge because it's setting you up to start the school year powerfully. So I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. right now. And let's do it that way.
Sonia, there's a question that just came up.
Mhm.
If someone is interested in having this performance analysis for their staff, what would be the best way for them to go about, coordinating that? What would be the process? If you could speak to that.
Yes, absolutely. We um, we have a program, and I would speak more to it as well. Let me open up this screen. Ah, okay, computer failure. There we go. Okay. Blame it on the computer. We have a program that's actually starting next week. It's called Director's Lab. And part of the program is that we will send the link to you specifically for your program. We actually did a pilot run this past June, July, and August for programs in the summer, and we used I think Samuel Field Y, the YMCA, New York Junior Tennis and Learning, the Federation of Italian Americans. So we had quite a few organizations join this to research and see if this assessment works for them. So we'll share those results with you, but I encourage you to take the Director's Lab, which I will be more in detail about in a few minutes. Okay, so what are we saying? Performance analysis. Why? What's the advantage? One, you're telling your staff what you expect from them off the top, from the beginning. By them doing this assessment, you're already giving them a sense of, you know what, I need to know these skills. I need you to know these skills, and I need you to implement these skills. And by you telling me what you want for training, that way now the staff is expected to be trained in these particular ways. So your job now is to be resourceful and creative on how you're going to give this information to your staff. Some of it's going to be in a full classroom setting of a workshop. Some of it is going to be sending them off to a PACE training because it's specific to like a STEM activities, specific to what they need to do in the classroom. Some of it is a one-on-one coaching. Some of it is just giving out a procedure in a memo style that will tell them each step by step what are the steps necessary for each concept. So what we're looking at is how to be flexible and knowing that you intentionally are developing your staff. This will give you an understanding of what they know, what's their capacity, and what are their motives. I want to talk a little bit about motives. Motives gives you an idea of why are they working with children in the first place, or why are they working in your program? And it's okay for staff to come in and say, I'm only here until I finish college. I'm not sure what I want to do. So here's an opportunity when you know that person is not necessarily thrilled about working with children, or they love working with children, but this is not their career path. You could give them information about other career paths or other avenues on how they could move forward in their career path, even though they're with you, and they will feel appreciated. They will feel like if they're heard. They will feel like they're part of whatever they're doing for the time that they're with you. So that's why motives, knowing your staff motives is critical. And that by you having this conversation with them, you're giving them this empowerment to say, you know what, no matter what you're going to do 3 years from now, could you give me a solid 2 years? You could make that statement, and in 2 years, I could support you to get from A to point B. Okay, I see that we're moving forward. I just want to share with you some research. Do we have another poll? Oh.
Yes, we do, and we will pull that right up.
Okay, so this is an evaluation poll. So do you have a system in place to evaluate your staff? Let's do that for a few seconds. And the other one is, do you have a system in place to evaluate your program evaluation? So let's take a few minutes to answer this poll. Let's see what the results are. We actually do it in seconds. This is great. Cool. So while the polls are coming in, give it about 5 more seconds, Tanika. It's very important that you also do a program evaluation, because your program evaluation will tell you how well are you facilitating, or how well is your program doing in all areas of your program, because that way you know what your staff also needs for training. Okay, the polls are in. So first one, do you have a system in place to evaluate your staff? 63% of you said yes, and 38% of you said no. So this is great. So 63% of you that said yes, meaning you already have some tool or some system, or even during your interview or orientation, you take the time to understand your staff capacity. Okay, that's awesome. And no, 38% of you said no. Next question, do you have a system in place to evaluate for your program evaluations? 13 of you said yes, 63% of you said no, and 25% of you said not sure. So this is where it gets really, really tricky, right? Because your organization, I'm going to try not to use the word should, but I'm going to use the word should, have a tool and say, these are the standards that I want you to implement in your program. And what that means is, when you start with standards, those standards have you do observation off of your standards. So if you're in the credential class with me, you understand what I mean by this, because part of the credential is for you to do observations. When you do observations in your program, you're able to see what's working and what needs more, what needs improvement. Right? But unless your organization gives you those standards and say, look, these are the standards that we want implemented in the program, you don't have nothing to measure yourself by. So it's important that if you don't have standards already, as a director, start considering getting some standards. And I could recommend some, absolutely. Right now, New York State is doing the quality assessment tool that is going to be launched this September. And I want to put that in, because we will be using those standards in the program of Directors Lab. So if you don't have an evaluation system, I recommend that you start asking some questions on what standards does your organization want you to use for your program. And you could always welcome to call us, and we're open to do some consultation as well, give you at least 30 minutes of our time to support you in creating program standards. So research confirms that organizations that take the time to collect data, design instruments to measure the employee's perspective and competence, and have clear incentives to influence employees' performance and motivation. Oh, I'm supposed to click. Result in an effective workforce, positive culture, job performance, and employee retention. So I just want you to stay with this. If you could just have a snapshot, clear incentives. Incentives don't have to be, a pizza party or money. It just means that you are listening and you're giving your staff what they're asking for. So I want you to think about how much you are allowing your staff to tell you what their needs are. And you then turn around and offer it to them. You will have better buy-in, and you will definitely create a strong team. And their motivation will be high too, because your job is to create some goals from the beginning of the year to the end of the school year that has your staff really excited and motivated for the whole year. We want to really look at how do we create a culture of learning. And the definition of a culture of learning is everybody in your environment feels like they're learning, feels like they're growing, feels like they're expanding because of the tool, because of the systems and the way that you are interacting with them. So I really want you to consider that. What we want to do, though, if you have any more questions, I would love to answer them at this point. Tanika, has anybody given more questions?
So one of the questions that actually just came up was how, or if you could speak to some tips to really coach those staff members that might be having difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So see, just like with your kids, we need to have very strong policies and procedures. So the staff and this is my motto, when I give my staff everything that they possibly need to do their job effectively, only at that point could I think about this person is not fit for the job. But if I don't give my staff 100% of the tools, the information, the education, the knowledge, the skills, the coaching, the resources, I could go on how much we need to give our staff, and they're still not performing, that means now I'm guiding them to find their place, a better place for them. Bottom line is, when you have a good plan on how you're going to develop your staff, the staff that is still needs additional support, because not everybody that you send for training is going to come back and just implement it. But you do have a system in place to say, I know you went for training, so now I'm expecting you to implement it. And I'm going to observe you. And then if you still need more support, I'm going to support you. And I'm going to demonstrate with you. And I'm going to coach you. And if you feel that the staff is still not performing, then you say, okay, I'm going to have somebody else coach you and give you more information. And then at that point, if the staff is still not performing, you do one or another. Do not bring you on for another year or the summer program, and you guide them to another position, or they leave anyway. They don't come back because they don't feel empowered.
Well, I hear Starbucks is hiring and they pay more.
Absolutely. They pay about the same now with minimum wage being at 15. So any other questions?
I'm looking here. So, just going back to the coaching and guiding piece, can you just speak to maybe just like, one snapshot tip that, if I haven't had time to prepare my program, I need to really figure out some quick things that I can do. Maybe my staff development is not coming up for a while. We don't have a lot of time for orientation. What's one thing, just off the top of your head that you could speak to that could really be something that I could do just, for some of us in the space?
Okay, that was a tough one. And I'm going to tell you now, I would say, huddles or a quick meeting every day right before they get on the floor. Sometimes this is the most difficult thing to do, but if you could manage to get everyone in one circle in a huddle for 10 minutes daily, you could do a powwow with your staff off the bat before you head off to your program. And that would support you in giving them the information they need for that day. So it's in small bites. And at the same time, you could you could do a quick assessment of which ones of your staff is, one, really not interested in doing this work. Two, they're not empowered, or they may be empowered, or they are excited. So this will give you a real quick assessment of where your staff stands on a daily basis and what information you need to give them on a daily basis. So I think time is up, and we need to give you information about the Directors Lab. So, Tanika, if you could start talking about the Directors Lab.
Yeah, and we quickly, before we do that, I just wanted to just throw in again, if, we couldn't get to all of the questions just because of time. However, if there are specific questions that were not answered during this session, you can feel free to send us your question at info, I-N-F-O, at dignityofchildren.com, and we can respond to you promptly in that way. So the Directors Lab, we're very excited about this new product because one of the big issues I know, Sonia, that I used to have when I was running program, sometimes was just really time. Time for me to get out of the building, time for my staff to get out of the building. And I really feel like Directors Lab is really that opportunity that really kind of takes that away. In terms of people having to leave program and being able to participate in an educational space, a true culture of learning from the comfort of their own home, which I think is amazing.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Tanika. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to review this in 1 minute, and I am going to offer everyone on this call, which I can see how many of you are, and we have your names, a $100 discount for this course. It costs $395. It's a 4-month webinar series. What we plan to do is, for every month, you're going to be with me for 2 hours on a webinar, and we're going to review some real key elements. One, begin with the inner mind. We'll have you work on your visions, your purpose, your goals, and most importantly, your staff performance analysis. And the second one will work on program evaluation and analyzing all the information and helping you prepare a professional development plan, an improvement plan, and a professional development plan. The third webinar will focus on writing procedures, process, and systems to support you in implementing your performance analysis, not your performance, your professional development plan and your program improvement. And most of all, on day 4, we're going to have some guest speakers, panelists join us. So you can ask them questions on their methods on how to manage staff and how to build a winning team. What I want you to understand that there are industries all over the world that are 100% clear that by investing time in developing their staff, the results, their outcomes are greater. They have a greater opportunity to reach their outcome and their results. So this is what I'm going to do. For everyone who's on this call and still on the call, thank you for staying on the call with me. I'm going to give you a $100 discount. All you need to do is register, tell us that you're on the call, we can confirm it, and we'll give you the discount.
But they have to do it before August 28th.
That's correct, which starts on Monday. Now, I want you to know something. The webinar will be recorded. So if you cannot make the 28th or the other dates that we have in place, you could always just listen to the recording, but we will be communicating with you throughout the month to support you with these tools, these strategies. We'll send you the performance analysis. We'll send you tools on how to create a plan. We'll send you tools on how to create a policy and a procedure. And we offering you consultation. So you could meet with myself, Tanika, for 30 minutes and talk about your specific needs, and we could support you on a pre and post. So we could have a pre-conversation and then we'll have a post-conversation by the end of November. I really am so grateful to have all of you on this call today. And I'm excited. I'm excited to take on this journey. This is my first time doing a webinar, so thank you. Thank you. I am so excited. It's done. For those of you who've worked with me before, please don't hesitate to give me a call. Where they're going to reach us, Tanika?
So they can reach us via email at info@dignityofchildren.com. Again, please feel free to communicate with us via Twitter and Facebook, and certainly, of course, sign up for the newsletter on our website. Our credential candidates have been highlighted. Our most recent one came out this week, and that's on www.dignityofchildren.com. It continues to be an honor and a privilege to work with you, Sonia, and I think that this information was great, so thank you very much for taking the time.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for taking an additional 6 minutes of your time. We have a question. Did you see that?
You know what? We do have a question, and so the question is, where can you register for the Directors Lab? And actually, you go on
right online.
You can actually register. There's a link on the website that you can access, and then it'll walk you through the process so that
right
you're part of the Directors Lab.
This wonderful Get Started.
Yeah, and it's not, and you know, again, like Sonia said, you know, for those of you on the call, on the webinar today, you have the $100 discount, but feel free to involve your staff as well so that they can be a part of it also.
Yes, yes. Nice. So bye, everyone, and have an amazing, amazing school year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.